What up, children of the screen? Your friendly neighborhood nerd scum here, and I am just about to watch Army of the Dead, the new film by Zack Snyder, but I wanted to film this little intro ahead of time because this is actually a movie I'm pretty excited for. Now, Zack Snyder is not one of my favorite directors. I think that he definitely has a lot of flaws, but he can make a really cool action movie, and based on the trailer for this movie, it looks like it is going to be a really fun action zombie movie, and I'm down for that. There are no characters that I love that he's doing his own take on to get in the way of my enjoyment of the movie, though the movie is also co-written by Zack Snyder, as well as Shay Hatton, who wrote John Wick 3, not bad, and Joby Harold, who wrote King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. Well, 1 out of 3 is not bad. So anyway, guys, I'm about to dive into this thing, and I'll be back here in just a little bit with my thoughts on the film. Well, you can definitely tell this movie was co-written by Zack Snyder. So, the plot of this movie, there's not a lot of plot, but the plot of this movie is essentially that after a zombie outbreak in Las Vegas, and Las Vegas is quarantined, a very wealthy person who used to own and run a casino in Las Vegas goes to Dave Bautista to put together a Ocean's 11 style, but with more action-oriented crew, so that they can go in and retrieve all the money from the vault of the casino before Las Vegas is nuked by the US government, which hasn't happened until now for some reason. So, then we see Dave Bautista putting together his crew of poorly written, paper-thin characters, some of which are entertaining, mostly due to the fact of the actors, who are, for the most part, pretty solid, just really giving it their all with the very minuscule material that they're given. And then they go in, and as you probably can assume, things don't go quite according to plan. Now, as I said previously, I was actually really excited for this movie. I went into this movie ready to put aside any biases I might have and just enjoy this movie for what it was. However, this movie was not fun. This is going to be another video of me bitching. So if that's something that you're not looking to hear, now's the time for you to dip out. So, now that they're gone, we're just going to go through my list that I made while watching the movie. Just all the things that bothered me. And then at the end, I'll swing back around and talk about some things that I liked, unless I manage to hit those as I'm going through here, because I did make a couple of notes about things that I thought were very well executed. So, first off, in the opening sequence, we see that zombies can dodge bullets in this movie, or at least this one zombie can, because that's something that never comes back into play for the rest of the film. So the opening of the film takes about 20 minutes, most of which is taken up by the title sequence, but you know what, I didn't complain about it in Pacific Rim, so I'll give it a pass here, especially because in that title sequence, the visuals are really awesome, and it's actually a lot of fun, despite like a really weird font choice that kind of got in my way for the first like half of it, but in general, it's a pretty fun sequence, despite the fact that it takes up about 20 minutes of a 2-hour and 20-something minute movie. That could have easily had 30 minutes cut out of it, and we wouldn't have lost anything. And wow, in this film, they waste no time going into the completely unsubtle, heavy-handed social commentary that doesn't really have any bearing on the actual themes of the movie in any way, shape, or form, and like with most Zack Snyder movies, that he had a hand in writing anyway, it's only really there so that action movie buffs can feel smart and later on pontificate about how the movie was super deep and that we're all just too stupid to have gotten it. You know, I don't know. I guess Zack Snyder's still trying to convince either us or himself that all the money he spent on art school wasn't wasted, which, like, it wasn't, because he can craft a very beautiful shot. Like, the art visual side of that is very much in this movie, for the most part. There's a couple of shots that are a little iffy, but you know what, I'm not really gonna focus on that because it's not a significant problem in the film. So up next, the dialogue in this film is frickin' atrocious. Yeah, it's real bad. I first noticed this in the first couple of scenes with Dave Bautista's character, and Dave Bautista is not a horrible actor. He usually manages to do dialogue pretty well, make it feel pretty natural, and he is acting his ass off in these scenes trying to make it work, but unfortunately it just doesn't. And unfortunately, this issue with dialogue is something that kind of continues throughout the run of the movie. Some of the characters it feels a little bit more natural, which I give most of that credit to the actor and the fact that most of those characters don't have a lot of dialogue to begin with, so they're really making the most of what little bit they have. But yeah, this is not the last time the dialogue will come up, but I'm only going to mention it in scenes where it was especially distracting or horrible. The music in this film, the opening sequence actually has some pretty decent stuff going. It works really well for the sequence that it's in, but pretty much every other musical cue in the movie is just a really lackluster cover of like a classic song, and it's really annoying and really distracting. All in all, the music on this feels like it was one of the few things in the movie where they were really trying to keep a tight grip on the budget and just get random covers of these songs that people will know, and it'll give them nostalgic feelings, so even if the song's kind of crap in this cover, they'll still have an emotional reaction to it. Unfortunately, on me, it didn't work because most of them really, really sucked. But we did get an actual Elvis song performed by Elvis for the closing credits, so that was nice. So, in the opening scene of this movie, as I mentioned, we very clearly see that the zombies we're going to see in this movie are not like zombies we've seen in other movies. And then in the opening title sequence, we see several of our main characters introduced, and again, it's pretty entertaining ways, dealing with these zombies. And amongst these scenes, there are a couple of zombies that you see in them that don't act in the typical way. But when we get to the scene where they're planning the job, they're acting like these are classic movie zombies, just that they happen to move fast, like maybe they're Dawn of the Dead zombies. But this is something that's been around for a while. Like Las Vegas has been overtaken for a while, and the idea that no one on the outside world knows, or even these people who encountered these zombies so much in like the initial like outbreak, none of them notice that these aren't just regular zombies, is complete and total bullshit, and it makes no frickin' sense whatsoever. And especially once you like get inside, we have a character who's called the Coyote. She does have a name, I don't remember it. She's again a very stock character. All like from the moment you first meet her, you know everything you need to know about her. And she does have some legitimately cool moments, but she's just another throwaway action character. They get inside the city and she then starts explaining to them how these zombies are different. Not before they go in, when that information would actually be fucking useful, but you know, once they're inside there and all their lives are in danger, so then we take 5 minutes out of the movie for her to explain it to them. Not long after that, in the film, they are moving through a building and they find a bunch of zombies in a hibernative state, and they're told by the coyote, you know, not to touch them or shine bright lights in their eyes, as that might actually wake them from this state. And right after that, pretty much, we get probably my favorite character in the movie, who is the German safecracker who's brought in to open up the vault. He gets really scared and freaked out by them and screams in one of their faces like a woman at the top of his lungs, and it gets no reaction. But not long after that, whenever this other character, who's kind of the guy who, he's like the head of security for the man who sent them in to get this money, and he's sent in with them, and we know from the first moment we see him that he's a sleazeball and he's going to betray them at some point. He does this very early in the film by basically separating the one girl who calls him out on his shadiness from the group and putting her in a position to die. And she manages to fight off a good bit of zombies, but one of the zombies lands with their hand on some stuff, some pots and pans, and eventually knocks it on the ground. And that noise wakes up all the zombies, leading to an action sequence, which doesn't make any goddamn sense given the fact that that is not even as loud as Home Dude screaming in one of their faces, but that managed to wake them up. What the fuck? The character who called out the shady guy, her name is Chambers, and I remember it because in the beginning of the movie she was a character that I really liked, as it seems like she's modeled a lot off of Vasquez from Aliens. Anyway, she gets separated from the group by the shady guy, and eventually she catches back up, but he's locked her out of this room, you know, and she goes to shoot him, but she's out of bullets. and she can't shoot him, and that sucks because she's gonna die. And then literally moments later, she crashes through a window with zombies coming at her, and now she's got 2 guns out and she's got unlimited ammo, and she's just taking them all out. But of course, there's too many of them, and she dies, despite the fact that, like, in the scene where they get her, they're like around her, but there are still people with lots of guns, like right over there. So if she were just to duck down and let them all shoot, then everything would have been fine. But they don't do that. Instead, they all bite her, and then her friend has to shoot a gas can that's on her back, making it explode. And they never really established that he has like incendiary rounds or something, so I'm guessing it's just an action movie thing. But either way, the whole sequence is fucking stupid. Early on in the movie, we established that right outside of Las Vegas, there are these camps that are set up for refugees of Las Vegas. And Dave Bautista has a daughter who works there. And she basically has made very good relationships with a lot of the people there, specifically this one mother and her children. But the mother has gone inside of Las Vegas to try to get money to get them out of the camps and get them to a better place. Although she hasn't come back. So, of course, Dave Bautista's daughter is the one who's going to help introduce them to the coyote, who's then going to get them into the city. But then she finds out that the woman went into the city, so she has to go with them. So at a certain point in the movie, once they've gotten into like the main casino building, they all split up to do their separate jobs, and Dave Bautista and his daughter go up to hit the power on the building, and we have a really, really poorly written, cliched, just hair pulling out heart-to-heart sequence between the two of them, where again, both the actors are doing their damnedest with the material that they are given, and there are moments where it almost works. But literally, this scene, we have seen it in hundreds of movies before, and there is almost nothing there for us at all. Like, it is just painful to watch. And it's painful to watch these very talented actors try to make it into something that's entertaining or heartfelt, because at the end of the day, you can just see them acting, and you can see on their faces the acknowledgement that it's not working, and it's bad. Once the power is on and they all reconvene down at the safe, the awesome character who's cracking the safe tells them all that he needs complete silence in order to do his work, that any little sound might mess him up. So immediately, all the characters start talking in kind of a hushed tone, but that's not complete silence. And then we cut away to something else, and we come back, all those characters are in the same area, speaking very, very, very fucking loudly as they count up some money that they found that was outside of the safe, kind of in like one of the money counting rooms, I guess, for the casino. And yeah, it makes no fucking sense. But there are several times in this movie where characters are maybe 10 feet away from each other, and people are speaking very loudly, and they can't hear what the other person is saying. So I literally don't even have a follow-up. That's just fucking horrible filmmaking. It's just awful. It is a trope of filmmaking, but the spatial relation of the characters is usually stretched out a little bit more. But in this movie, if the characters are not in the same shot, or if one of the characters is out of focus, then they are out of earshot and cannot hear. Fuck. Obviously, as I said, there's a shady character who's employed by the man who gave them all this job, and he has ulterior motives, and we find out what those are in a scene where he goes outside with the coyote and traps the character who will come to know as the Queen of the Dead, not Aaliyah, but this movie's Queen of the Zombies, because there's an alpha zombie king, the guy who could dodge bullets earlier. He'll come back up in a minute. Anyway, yeah, they cut off her head and put it in a bag, because that's what the shady guy really wants. And this, of course, pisses off all the zombies, and they come after them. Now, in that same sequence, right before that's happening, this all coincides and lines up with Dave Bautista's daughter realizing that if the woman she's actually inside looking for is still alive, then she's going to be in kind of the main nest, which is at the Olympic, I believe it's called. The main nest of the zombies. So she sneaks off to go do that at the same time when all the zombies are rushing towards the casino, and she's hiding behind a car, and all these zombies who, like, we've been shown, like, sniffing and, like, hunting prey and being very good at this, just don't notice this girl who's hiding behind a car. It's fucking ridiculous. The slimy guy that I was mentioning before, Yeah, he finally decides to fuck the whole group over now that he has his head in a bag, and that's what he really came for. Nor his boss care about the money. That's what they really want. So whenever things start getting a little bit rough, he locks them all out of the escape route, fucking them over, and then exits the building. And then once he exits the building and he's out in the wide open, he takes the bag out, I guess because he has felt that the head has stopped moving, even though that's not something that we've really focused on previously. And he decides to open it up to make sure that it's still fresh, because apparently it's still moving, or being somewhat alive is something that frickin' matters. Also, if you cut the head off, wouldn't that still be like destroying the brain? I don't know, maybe not. Anyway, he does this, and the tiger attacks him, because like from the moment we saw the tiger, we knew that that was going to happen, and kind of knew it would happen with this character, because again, he is so obviously and blatantly the character that's in this kind of movie that happens to. And that is a reoccurring theme in this movie. It is so predictable and so cliche that there are moments within the first like 30 minutes of the movie where you can be like, this is going to happen to that character, this is going to happen to that character, and this is going to happen to that character. But this one was the most blatant and most obvious example of it. Right as the zombies are attacking the building, but our main characters still really haven't quite figured it out yet, there's a scene where one of the female characters, who again I haven't mentioned because up until this scene she's almost completely superfluous to the plot, basically you find out that she used to be in love with Dave Bautista, and he had feelings for her too. But, after all the stuff that happened, like, he thought he screwed that up, and they have a heart-to-heart moment, and then the zombies attack, and she gets killed right away. And then the king zombie comes in, and he's got a metal bulletproof mask, and every character in this movie keeps shooting him in the mask. Not just in this scene, even in the rest of the movie that follows, but I'm not going to bring it up past this point because I'm mentioning it here. Literally every character shoots him in the mask, and even when they see that the mask is bulletproof, they just keep shooting him until the point where they're out of bullets, and then they're fucked. And it's like, none of these characters have been depicted as being quite this stupid, so what the hell? You don't even see any of them aiming for the eyes, and some of these characters are supposedly really good shots. And, you shoot him in the eye, that would work, but no, fuck that. No, he's got a bulletproof mask, and it makes a cool noise when we shoot it, so I guess we're going to keep on shooting it. It's like one of those little things at the fair where the ducks are going by, and if you hit it and get to actually knock it over, then you get a fucking prize. I don't know. Maybe they thought if they shot it enough times, they'd get a stuffed animal or something. I don't fucking know. The safecracker guy and another character that I haven't really mentioned, I'm going to call him the saw guy, because he carries a big saw, and that combined with typical Hollywood black character tropes is pretty much all he's got going for him, even though the actor plays him extremely well and he is actually entertaining. They basically get kind of boxed off with like the lead zombie character, and it leads to not only more of shooting in the mask, but eventually a fist fight where the German guy who's supposed to crack the safe locks Sawman inside of the safe to save him and gets killed. And while that is happening, the rest of the characters who are still alive are running through the casino, basically having an all-out zombie shooting gallery where, it's pretty typical action movie fare, but with zombies. But keep in mind that these aren't your normal zombies. They have super strength and can jump 40 feet in the air. But guess what? They're not the only ones who have enhanced abilities, because Dave Bautista takes a table, which isn't light, and he's a big guy, but he takes a table and picks it up from underneath and throws it 20 feet across the room, taking out a whole group of zombies. What the fuck, dude? There's nothing else like that in this movie from any of the human characters, and it just comes out of nowhere. So eventually, only Dave Bautista and the helicopter pilot character manage to get out of the casino. And Dave Bautista basically says, we've got to go over to the other building, the Olympic or whatever, and get my daughter, because I know that's where she is. They go there. There's an okayish action sequence going on in this segment of the movie that eventually leads to them getting to the roof and finding that the helicopter pilot has left, but of course not. She comes back. Again, aliens, you know what I'm saying? Like the thing with Bishop from Aliens, you remember that? They do it in this movie too, except in this movie it sucks. And then, once, the helicopter pilot gets back, instead of just getting on the helicopter and fucking leaving, No, they stand around and they have a conversation for a few minutes about like, oh, why the helicopter pilot left, but then grew a conscience, and they do this while their back is to the rooftop access exit. And of course, the king zombie comes out and jumps on the helicopter with them, and then we get, you know, again, it's a zombie this time, but we've seen this scene a million times in every other action movie. But this also coincides with the government bombing the city because, oh yeah, again, I'm not going through a point by point of the plot, but like the government decided that they were going to bomb the city earlier, like just nuke it. So, it's the big climactic action sequence. That's like a carbon copy of things we've seen a dozen times before, except now there's a zombie. So, of course, after the nuke is dropped, the helicopter just freaking crashes in a crash that really should have killed everybody. But the only people who actually survive for any extended period of time are Batista and his daughter. Although Batista was bitten by the king zombie in the final action sequence, so he's fucking dead anyway. And you remember the mother of the children that his daughter went in there for? Like, I don't even think there was a shot of her. They show the helicopter pilot who's been impaled, but I don't even think there was a shot of that woman in the sequence. So then, Dave Batista and his daughter have another heart-to-heart, which again seems really, really forced, but I will give it credit that this scene, out of all the father-daughter scenes in the movie, probably works the best. It's still really poorly written, but the actors are very much on point, and there were a couple of moments in it where, despite the bad writing, it really did get to me. So again, his daughter survives. But there is another survivor, because Sawman, who was in the vault, he also survived a nuclear explosion because he was in the vault. And even though he was trapped in the vault, he somehow finds his way out of the vault, but we're not shown that. And then he climbs up onto the surface and walks through the ruined city and eventually gets to Utah to rent a plane. But neither he nor Batista's daughter are affected by the nuclear fallout of the fucking nuke that they dropped on Las Vegas because, even though like the blast radius was enough to crash the helicopter and he literally walked through a radiation filled city, it's not really a big deal, I guess, because zombie movie? Fuck if I know. But we then discover once he's on the plane that he was actually bitten by the king zombie back whenever Home Dude was in the scene where Home Dude locks him in the vault. Apparently in this big fight that he had with the Zombie King, he got bit and he never noticed it. Also worth mentioning that this guy has got a freaking Omega tattoo on his chest, and the King Zombie is called the Alpha. So I guess Zack Snyder never met an unsubtle metaphor or whatever that he could just use a hammer to beat you over the head with. So one of the most likable but underutilized characters in the movie now is, the new Patient Zero for a new zombie apocalypse for the sequel, which Zack Snyder already has a plan for. Great. And this is kind of the last real complaint I wanted to mention about this movie, and that is the fact that this is a zombie movie. Even though these zombies have superpowers, they're all faster than a human being, they're all stronger than a human being. Also, their reproductive systems still work, and the King Alpha zombie that we see, his hair grows longer from when we see him in the first of the movie to when we see him in Vegas. So they're not actually zombies in any fucking way, shape, or form. And while we're told that the zombies eat people, we see lots of zombies killing and biting people. And I'm sure there was something in the opening credit sequence that showed the zombies literally eating someone, but from what I remember, I don't actually recall anyone being eaten, just being bit. So, when it comes to the zombies in this movie, there are some really cool ideas at play, even though a lot of it feels like it was stolen from the Will Smith I Am Legend movie. Like, a lot of the zombie dynamics and power structures, that feels like the way they are. And it also feels like at some point Zack Snyder saw a bunch of the cover art for the Crossed comic series, which if you haven't read is a comic book that I really enjoy. It's not about zombies, it's about people with a disease. But yeah, it looks like he saw those and either didn't know that they weren't zombies or just thought, well, if I just take the cross rash off their face, then I can use this imagery to create my zombies who like have horses that have skull and skin armor, and these zombie characters who have like crazy, interesting Mad Maxian post-apocalyptic costumes and stuff. Also, by the way, if you haven't checked out the Cross comic book series, it's really awesome. I definitely recommend it. It is pretty much all the cool things about this movie, except none of the things that suck. With, characters that are well written and, awesome stuff like that. And if you're interested in it but not sure if you want to read it, then right popping up now is a link to my playlist where I've covered several of the issues of Cross Plus 100, which was written by Alan Moore of all people, so definitely check that out. Anyway, guys, so I said I was going to mention some things that I liked, and I actually kind of covered all of it in the little parts that I was talking about. A lot of the actors in this movie are actually really solid, and they give pretty good performances given the material that they have to work with. A lot of the visuals in the movie are, like in most Zack Snyder movies, really solid. However, the writing in this movie is abysmal. The pacing of this movie is horrid. And the editing in this movie is very so-so. Like I said earlier, there's easily 30 minutes of this movie that you could cut out and we wouldn't actually lose anything. Like, we'd lose a couple of lines of dialogue here and there, but none of those lines of dialogue actually add to the characters or give the movie any more substance or any more weight to it. All in all, for the majority of this movie, I was just bored. And then when I wasn't bored, it was like every third scene, I was being pulled out of the movie as, like, the kind of logic holes that you couldn't fill up with all the zombies in Las Vegas just completely pulled me out of the movie. And I just had to sit there for a minute going like, wait, no, wait, how does that work? What's the thing? I don't, basically, this movie's not as bad as Sucker Punch. I can definitely say that. This is a better movie than Sucker Punch, but it is not the movie that the trailer sold us on. It is not kind of a fun, balls to the wall, gory, action, extreme zombie movie. It's a Zack Snyder movie. It's methodically paced. It's poorly written, paper-thin characters, going through the motions of a plot from set piece to set piece, giving us little speeches and little monologues that are supposed to feel deep and kind of enriching the characters, but really it's all very basic, surface-level stuff. And all the stuff that is supposed to be deep is kind of all the stuff that every 13-year-old out there thinks is deep. So, yeah. All in all, guys, I was highly disappointed in this movie. It seems like it should be something that is right up Zack Snyder's wheelhouse, but again, the issue is not him as a director, the issue is him as a writer. And every time we see one of his movies where he tries to craft the story and have the biggest hand in crafting that story, we end up with this kind of crap. And one of the reasons why I'm so hard on him as a director is because despite all his many talents that he has, he is incapable of seeing his flaws and refuses to bring in the right people to aid him in his filmmaking endeavors to make up for those flaws. And he seems so intent on trying to prove to us that he's more than just an action director, as if being an action director is some kind of bad thing. He wants to prove to us that he's, like, deep, and he, like, thinks about stuff, dude. And, like, he's not Michael Bay. But, I mean, they graduated from the same frickin' art school. They were taught by the same professors. Okay? They're basically the same guy, except Zack Snyder's a much nicer person and a much snazzier dresser. So anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on Army of the Dead. They're not even... Are they dead? I don't know. They're colder. Maybe they don't have pulses. They have Fuck it, never mind. Those are my thoughts on the movie, guys. What did you think about the movie? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you like this video, please leave a like and share it with some friends. Also, if you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe so you can check out all the awesome content I'll have coming out in the future where I'm not going to be just bitching about stuff. Thank you very much, children of the screen. I hope you all have a good one. Nerd Scum.